You know, Chicago went out. They chose to participate in their elections. And because we're a nation that is blessed to get the government we deserve, they chose Brandon Johnson. Here is the new mayor of Chicago.
You know, I'll never forget the profound words of former President Barack Obama, you know, when he said that if he were to have a son, he would have looked like Trayvon. And then you fast forward to Mike Brown, Freddie Gray, Quantonio LaGreer here in Chicago, who was having a mental health crisis. And the only equipment on the scene were guns. And he's dead. And Betty Jones, his neighbor, who came to his defense, is dead. And so this is really about making sure that people understand the context of the level of frustration. When you see that type of brutalization over and over again, it certainly can be discouraging.
So if defunding the police isn't the answer, what do you plan to do with your resources? Is it less money or more money to police departments?
Well, it's more money towards the areas of needs, right? And as I mentioned before, you know, we're working to double the amount of young people that we hire, not just for summer jobs, but for year-round positions. One of the things that I think is actually quite fascinating about our position here in Chicago, we've been pushing this ordinance called treatment, not trauma. In essence, first responders, social workers, counselors, EMT, these individuals would show up to cause that require those type of interventions. In fact, in Chicago, almost 40% of the 911 calls are mental health crises. We're asking police officers to do their job and someone else's. Like, that's not strategic. In fact, 60% of the violence that happens in the city of Chicago, it occurs in 6% of the cities.
I'm excited for Chicago. I think it's a blessing to live in a country where we get to choose the government that best represents us. And you know which neighborhoods chose this guy if you look at a breakdown of the elections? Surprise, surprise. It's the lily white neighborhoods, all the white liberals who voted for him out of that white guilt. And it's the worst neighborhoods, the black neighborhoods in Chicago, where that 6% is, where violent crime is at an all-time high. They chose this guy. So you know how sympathetic I normally am to people who grow up in bad circumstances, in circumstances that are like war zones in this country. I've always been sympathetic there. That sympathy is going to begin going away more and more for these specific areas. The areas that have been just filled with drugs and murder and theft in Chicago ran to the polls and voted for the defund the police candidate. So I'm sorry, Daddy Jesse's fresh out of sympathy. I checked my sympathy meter right before I tuned in, and I'm fresh out. So the next time I find out there's another 500 murders in Chicago in a couple weeks, I'm going to shrug my shoulders. I didn't vote that way. You all keep voting for it. What do you want me to do?